Today, I make my 7th contribution to these annual sectoral debates. In my capacity as opposition spokesman on transport and works. These are extremely important portfolio subjects in modernizing the country's infrastructure and economy. I begin, as always, with the wisdom of Isaiah, who advised us in chapter 12, verse 4. Give thanks to the Lord. Call on his name. Make known his deeds among the peoples, for he has done glorious things. So I thank the Lord for his blessings to his people and I over the last year. We are emerging from rough times indeed, Madam Speaker. I thank my constituents of Northwest Manchester for their continued support, especially my councillors, my secretary, Latoya, my driver, Aldin, who has been with me for 13 years, the executive of Northwest Manchester, and other members of my team. Madam Speaker, I also want to recognize students from the Mile Gully High School, which is the only high school in Northwest Manchester. I see other family members in the gallery. Madam Speaker, when things get rough, I remember the words of Dennis Brown. Do you know what it means to have a revolution and what it takes to make a solution? I also thank you, Madam Speaker, for your leadership, the clerks of the House, the staff of the House of Parliament, colleagues on both sides. Colleagues on both sides. In his absence, I want to thank the Leader of the Opposition, who continues to perform his duties with high level of wisdom and integrity. I affirm my readiness for the task of rescuing Jamaica. Madam Speaker, my family has been a continued source of strength, guidance, and inspiration for me. This year marks 5 years since my mother, Phillips, also called Sister Minnie, passed. Her continued contribution to the Rastafarian faith and the Pan-African movement will transcend generations. We continue to miss you, Mommy. I also want to thank my mother, Sandra, who is a rock of our family. Madam Speaker, I am the only sitting member of Parliament who continues to benefit from the presence of a parent, my father, sitting in the House at the same time. Outside of Michael and Norma and Manley, and we have Pernell Charles, Jr. and Sr. We are the longest serving father-son in the Parliament. I appreciate the generosity of his advice and support. And to my daughters, who have been there with me every step of the journey. Love you, Isabel and Gabriella. and my wash belly celebrates her 18th birthday this Friday. Happy birthday when it comes, Gabriel. Wash belly. Madam Speaker, the World Bank says roads are the arteries through the economy pulses. By linking producers to markets, workers to jobs, students to school, and the sick to hospitals. Roads are vital to any developmental agenda. I will explore how Jamaica is doing on what we will need to ensure that our infrastructure development and maintenance remain front and center, and indeed the backbone of our goal to make Jamaica the place to live, work, do business, and raise families. Madam Speaker, I have reviewed the presentations made by the portfolio's 4 ministers since 2016. I've also looked back at my own presentations and the comments and recommendations made in the period. It seems this administration forgets it has been in office for 11 of the last 15 years. These has not been meaningful advances. I have to say, Madam Speaker, that infrastructure and public transport have been treated as a bastard child of the Jamaican economy instead of the arteries through which the economy pulses. There is no transport policy and plan. Remember, you were there once. Little investment and little or no maintenance of our road infrastructure and public transport system. Transport contributes about 4% of the GDP of the economy. The basket of goods and services used by Statin to measure the movements in the consumer price index weighs transport at 11.2% of total consumption. It is the second largest component of the CPI. Transport is not only about the movement of people and goods. It also contributes significantly to the country's productivity and quality of life. It begs the question, Madam Speaker, what is the vision of public transport, road infrastructure, and maintenance? How can we use the sectors as a contributing factor to increase the country's productivity? The truth is, we have been moving backwards, Madam Speaker. Some will remember the days of the JOS, Jamaica Omnibus Service. Policy deficiencies, including a lack of financial resources and absence of vision, led to its demise in 1982. We can recall the brutish minibus system with people packed in the transit and VW buses. They were dangerous, uncomfortable, with regular abuse of students with loud shouts of no schoolers. Some of us will remember that. It was a particularly shameful and disgraceful part of our history, with units carrying our people on makeshift seats, mostly made of welded iron, with a thin layer of sponge, with center seats from stools made of lumber. Things were no different in rural parishes. People crammed in the few buses on narrow roadways, and market buses with roof racks loaded with farm produce, and in some instances, persons riding on top. There's not enough seats in the bus. Then there were commuters standing at the bus stop for a very long time. In those days, if you missed the bus in the morning, you had better start walking. There's no other bus leaving the district till the following morning or late evening. Bobby, you remember those days. Today, Madam Speaker, things are rapidly going back to the past. Bad policy, political interference, and lack of vision are killing Jamaica's transport sector. And the bad old days of the 1980s are back with us. We need a new direction for urban and rural transport, Madam Speaker. 20 years ago, we had a vision when the Jamaican Urban Transit Company was established to offer the commuting public a first-class transportation system with the vision of a modern, efficient, safe, and cost-effective service. We moved away from the ramshackle transport system of the 1980s. That we did. But sad to say, we are back there. Madam Speaker, much could be said about the JUTC and the public transport services, which are now at the new lows and represent a threat to safety, efficiency, and cost-effectiveness, hallmarks of public transport systems globally. I hope the Minister of Finance is listening keenly. A new direction is badly needed to take Jamaica's transport sector forward to achieve global standards. Any transport study will tell you that governments give public transport the same priority as all other societal functions because it is a reasonable reflection of the overall society and can influence the priorities of the country. Public transport must have sustainability, values, benefits, and capacity. It should never be forgotten, Madam Speaker, that transport systems support complex social and economic interactions and reflect the aspirations of a society, such as accessibility and mobility, which expands horizons. It is not a mere hustle, but an integral part of the society and its economy. Jamaica public transport system needs a medium and long-term plan of 5 to 10 years to get us out of the mess and restore the vision and mission of 20 years ago for the Jamaican people. The plan must involve all players in the sector, together representing the taxi associations, the JUTC, the Transport Authority, the police, the private sector, and the government. Everyone must be at the table presenting their inputs and developing this plan, that no matter which administration comes to office, there will be a roadmap to an improved, if not ideal, national public transport sector for the country and its people. The KMTR is in a quagmire and needs emergency attention. In 2016, there were 2,000 Hackney carriage licenses. I'm going to repeat. In 2016, there were 2,000 plus Hackney carriage licenses. By 2022, it has climbed to near 7,000 in Kingston and St. Andrew alone. That is why we are bursting at the seams. Safety is compromised, driving habits are dangerous, and there is no infrastructure to accommodate this increase of over 300%. The system must be urgently rationalized. Madam Speaker, most Hackney carriages now operate like route taxis. There are limited parking locations providing a safe environment for operators and commuters in the process of picking up and setting down. Poor governance from the regulator and little or no policy direction from the government. We are in a crisis, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask a few questions. Is it that we need to go back to the franchise system in the KMTR? How will the JUTC manage routes it has abandoned over the last few years? What percentage of the 120 routes can the JUTC service adequately? And finally, how will the hilly routes be serviced with limited resources? Madam Speaker, transport needs policy and leadership to manage this deep crisis. Time come, Mr. Speaker, for a new direction. Mr. Speaker, while bus fares for children and the elderly are subsidized in the Kingston Metropolitan Transport Region, the KMTR, it is not the same in rural parishes, right, Bobby? The estimated $11 billion loss this financial year and $7 billion subvention are unfair and unacceptable, as rural people get no such subsidy. After 20 years of JUTC operation, Mr. Speaker, we on this side, the government in waiting, declare that under our watch, a massive hemorrhaging will be cauterized. As a matter of urgency, and the JUTC will be put on a sustainable path to fulfill its role as an efficient mass transit provider in our capital city. And in the future, Mr. Speaker, the entire country. That was the vision of the JUTC when it was created 20 years ago. That after mastering the Kingston Metropolitan Region, that it would roll out into rural parishes running from town centre to town centre. But that now is a fleeting dream under this administration. We will address rural students, workers, pensioners, the elderly, and the disabled. They deserve no less, Mr. Speaker. Even with the purchase of 70 buses that we are told will be added later this year, and which the minister said should have been here 6 months ago, JUTC will have a huge gap in its operating fleet. There are only 170 reliable units at the company today, when 550 is needed to take care of the needs of the over 500,000 transit-dependent persons in the KMTR on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, there's about 220, 230 buses that the JUTC has right now. When the buses roll out in the morning, by 9 o'clock, they only have about 170. So the rest of them broke down. Simple. No, they're broken down. So, if you need 550, you're adding 70. Out of that 170 buses that what we term reliable, Minister, at least 50 of those need to be retired now also. So when you add the 70 buses, you're not adding anything to the fleet. You're basically at net zero. During the budget debate, the Minister of Finance announced the purchase of 200 electric buses over the next 2 years. That's inadequate. It's a start, but inadequate, and will only serve to perpetuate the present state of the JUTC. And I'm going to plead for the commuters that if you can find it in the budget for this year, to add even another 50 buses and not wait until the next financial year to start planning. then it will help not only the commuting public, but the taxpayers who have to find an additional $7 billion to subsidize the JUTC. My information is that there will be operating challenges with the e-buses, some of which are cultural. So, Minister, what is happening? You're already facing where these diesel buses, you hear the complaints of windows being broken out by stoning from residents. The e-buses have to be made lighter, so it has more glass on the units. So you have less aluminum, more glass to make it lighter. So you just imagine looking like a TV screen to some of our people. As I say, it's a societal problem. But mind you try to fix one thing on one side and cost you on the other side. So we already have incidents of stoning, and these buses are made almost entirely of glass, since they must be made lighter. There's also a road network, of which is hilly and may pose a difficulty. We fully support the introduction of e-buses, but we must be careful with the specs and what it is that we are including in our bus fleet. We also demand transparency in the procurement of these units, because, Minister, you already have 5 electric buses coming in, 5, in this set of 50 that is coming. 70, right? But the 50 is 2 different. One is hydro and one, right? You have 5, but you have not yet completed the test with the one bus that you have here. So you already have 5 on the way, but you're not even sure if they can work. But you have 5 coming now, which you're not. You start blaming the minister. Eh? You start blaming the minister. Eh? Mr. Speaker, the JUTC needs 400. The JUTC, I thought that was joint up government, but there seems to be a division between. Because I heard the 200 electric buses announced by the Minister of Finance. The JUTC needs 400 buses over the next 3 years, with adequate spare parts, with necessary service and special tools agreement to cover the new and existing fleet that will be beneficial to the JUTC. A new fare collection system to replace the existing one, which is now over 10 years old and serviced from the Czech Republic. The system is needed to reduce pilferage and leakage from the fare box. Fare collections, and I want you to listen to this one, fare collections has dwindled from $5 billion annually under a PNP administration to $1.5 billion under this administration. Mr. Speaker, this is a root of the need for a $7 billion subsidy, government subsidy. When we left office, when the PNP left office, the operating subsidy was a mere $466 million per year. So you can see the deterioration of the operation of the JUTC. If you have less buses, you're going to have a smaller fare table, which is going to require more subsidy from government. And that's why the delay, because the last time new buses were purchased were 2016, and it was ordered from 2015. So that gap in ordering buses has cost the travelling public and the taxpayers. But it also costs the economy. But Minister, and you speak about it, it costs us in productivity. That is important. This need has been acknowledged for years. Because I remember when Minister Montego himself announced the new fare collection system. The new fare collection system. Eh? It has been at procurement since your time as minister. I can't blame you. I can't blame you. I can't blame you. Mr. Speaker, echoing the words of the former minister, that the fare collection system is critical and has been under procurement since his time. Nothing can go so. Nothing shouldn't go so. It has been even included in throne speeches and in presentations made by previous ministers, yet nothing further. What is the present status, Mr. Speaker? The company is in need of other system changes to improve its process, to retain operations and maintenance staff with better salaries. We have mechanics now. You have mechanics rotating from depot to depot because we have not been able to retain good mechanics. So not only by training them, but you have to look at the salary scale. Otherwise, they're going to go to other foreign lands. Right, Minister? And we don't have. Right, Minister? Yeah? Yeah. And most importantly, improve its scheduling and timetabling of buses on routes for commuters to know and plan shorter travel times. In 2023, commuters will not accept waiting for hours to get a bus and should not have to. They will find other options because there are many other options out there. Those days should have been gone, should never be to return, but they are still with us. Mr. Speaker, the Jamaica Railway Corporation cannot be left out of the Jamaica plan for more efficient public transport services. The JRC is important in increasing connectivity and travel options. Former Minister Henry called it his multimodal plan. The JRC is losing money on its current operations, Mr. Speaker. Its operating costs. I cannot blame that minister. I cannot blame that minister. I cannot blame that minister. The JRC is losing money on its current operations. Its operating cost, Minister of Finance, has increased by 700% last year due to the recently introduced school service from Old Harbour and Linstead to Spanish Town, which was badly planned without any origin and destination surveys. We are not against the service, but it will not be successful with the right policy, without the right policy and plan. We cannot keep doing the same wrong things and expect to get a different result. The JRC has the responsibility to maintain its locomotives and its tracks. It cannot waste resources. The company made a small profit of 10 million in financial year 21-22.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the member's time for speaking be extended by 15 minutes.
The question is that the member be given more time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the JRC has responsibility to maintain its locomotives and tracks. The company made a small profit of $10 million in the financial year 2021-22. An $80 million loss in financial year 22-23, and a projected loss of $115 million in this financial year 23-24. Repairs and maintenance moved from an expenditure of $4 million in financial year 21-22 to $10 million in 22-23 to an estimated expenditure of $33 million in 23-24. Mr. Speaker, there is cause for concern. The level of losses needs to be cauterized with urgency. Let us not turn the JRC into a JUTC. Mr. Speaker, we also have concerns with Montego Bay Metro. Mr. Speaker, it is beyond me that over a week now, not one bus has rolled out of the depot at Montego Bay Metro. Workers have been on strike. Workers have been on strike. And, Mr. Speaker, I can't see why an agency of the state where workers are unhappy with management and other issues, that while Rome burns, that the people of St. James, Mr. Speaker, as one of the member of parliaments down there, while the people of St. James suffer, the minister tinkers with the operation of the Montego Bay Metro. There are also concerns with the Port Security Corp. 11 weeks now, and workers have not been paid their allowances. Overtime owed to workers. Serious staff shortage of workers having to leave Kingston to go to Montego Bay to go and fill vacancies. Multiple workers carrying the entity to the IDT and to the Ministry of Labour, costing the entity millions of dollars to settle with workers. And there is also staff feeling disgruntled at the Transport Authority. Mr. Speaker, the transport sector is in crisis. We are seeing it. The people are seeing it. Why are you not seeing it? It needs leadership, Mr. Speaker. In February, after the fiasco with the implementation of the new Road Traffic Act and regulations, the Prime Minister asked the National Road Safety Committee Council to review certain provisions in the regulations. The time frame had been set at 1 month. but it has been reported on April 21st that the NRSC was now expected to complete its work in about 2 months' time. After completion, a report will be sent to the Cabinet for consideration and decision. So it seems the entire process, including new drafting and parliamentary approval, will take up to a year. That is not good enough, because there are still challenges and problems out there to do with the RTA. When he comes to speak, will the minister also say how long will it take for the phased implementation of all aspects of the road traffic legislation? For example, when will the regulations, and I'm not sure which minister, For example, when will the regulation dealing with the usage of cameras to photograph license plates be brought into effect? Has the administration yet decided on which system to be used? Have the child seat regulations amendments been finally gazetted? Are some of the questions we'd like answers. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, why are we not using existing camera networks such as Jamaica Eye and the NWA's own infrastructure in our own towns, in our town centres, to better regulate and enforce traffic flows and breaches? We know that tests have been done, but the government is uncertain as to what to do. What is the present status? Mr. Speaker, there are serious matters that need to be considered urgently. We on this side participated in the debate on both the bill and the regulations, and we have said so publicly. However, we must acknowledge a trend in this Parliament. That legislation is tabled, not well put together in some instances. Debates are hurried, and when suggestions are made from this side, the supermajority is used to quash purposed amendments. In this case, the opposition has made numerous proposals to amend certain clauses in the bill and regulations in the lower and upper chambers, but they were ignored. Mr. Speaker, we remain convinced that increasing fines alone is not a deterrent to poor driving habits, and that will not bring drivers into compliance. The opposition believes that what is also needed is effective public education, not the one that I see on social media alone. We're talking a fulsome public education, a cleaning of the system of widespread corruption which permeates driver competence and inspection processes and enforcement by police. What of the promised public education? There remains serious widespread dissatisfaction with the current levels of fines, treatment of motorists, and inadequate communication about the offences and the fines they attract. The government should not feel that because there have not been no demonstrations or public disturbances that all is well. All is not well. The recent announcement by the government about the huge revenues earned from road traffic fines gives the impression that revenue from increased fines is what is important, and not the public order benefits from the RTA. Well, Mr. Speaker, hear me. Despite the fines, there is still disorder on our streets, and safety on our roads is not improving. When does this administration intend to restore public order? Time comes, Mr. Speaker, for a new direction. I could not close this section without putting back on the table, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the use of the hedge tax of $7 per litre. During the COVID-19 lockdown, we called for the removal to assist the preservation of public transport and to cap the ad valorem tax, the SCT on fuel. Both taxes together extract billions of dollars from the sector without direct benefit to the sector. I am again raising the issue as the sector is cash-starved. Most of the benefits proposed by the government, including the one-off cash grant of $20,000 and the refleeting loans, did not work well, and most operators did not benefit from it. A rebate of those taxes going forward is the best way of injecting cash back in the system to assist the small private investors in the public transport sector. They need it for reinvestment, and you will pull more of them in the formal sector. Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that our road network has been deteriorating faster than we can repair it. We are still without a plan to initiate a workable road maintenance program. What exists is unsustainable. 3 years ago, the Prime Minister announced the Lengthman program. We on this side gave it support, but 3 years later, the program is yet to begin. A clear danger of applauding announcements. We are yet to hear, even hear, why and when it will begin. Last December, the Prime Minister announced a $40 million per constituency maintenance program. While we are appreciative of it, it is still woefully inadequate to deal with the widespread poor road conditions across Jamaica. I'm even speaking for you. But this year in the budget debate, the Minister of Finance, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Finance announced a 3-year, $40 billion road maintenance program, but provided no details. I expect the Prime Minister, who is a portfolio minister, would provide the relevant details in his budget presentation, but nothing. He was silent. I then searched the budget in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and have not seen any provisions. Mr. Speaker, I therefore ask the question. Most MPs, all who bawling over there now, spoke about bad interior roads and lack of regular maintenance during your constituency debate. Every single one of you over there. Will any of this money, quiet man. Since you can't speak for yourself, I'm speaking for you. Because you are gagged over there. So, Mr. Speaker, will any of this provision of the $40 billion program be spent on interior parochial roads? And I know you're happy that I'm asking the question. What roads will be the focus for this financial year? And how much of that $40 billion allocation for the 2023-24 financial year will be allotted? Mr. Speaker, I will repeat ad nauseum. Jamaica needs a sustainable, fully dedicated road maintenance fund and program. Why is the government not looking at the available data and the recommendations provided by its own agency, the National Works Agency, who has been asking for a road maintenance fund? How can the Ministry of Finance continually boast of budget surpluses and growth? Yet when asked about road maintenance, the refrain is, we just don't have the funds. Minister, you will never have the funds required if we are only to finance our road maintenance from the consolidated fund alone. A dedicated road maintenance fund is our best option to get us out of this downward spiral. Data shows that with poor conditions, vehicle operating costs increases by 30 to 50% and above. Transport costs are undeniably among the factors which influence productivity and competitiveness. Studies have concluded that in the long term, every unit of currency which is not invested in maintenance results in 3 units of increased transport costs and 2 to 3 units of road rehabilitation costs that could have been avoided. Mr. Speaker, I have to give me back the time that them take from me. In other words, each dollar spent on road maintenance decreases by $5 to $6 the burden of maintenance costs to the state and the traveling public. Mr. Speaker, there must be a more inclusive approach to major construction projects undertaken by the government of Jamaica. In my last sectoral presentation, I spoke of the narrative that Jamaica does not have good engineers or contractors to do our major infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, that is far from the truth. Jamaica has some of the most qualified engineers and contractors, but we continue to give them a raw deal, basket carry water. The playing field for local contractors must be leveled, not in a protectionist way, but to give equal access and operating conditions to all. Raw materials, equipments, and vehicle acquisitions are given huge concessions to foreign contractors, but full price and duties for Jamaicans. The playing field must be leveled. Local contractors must have NCC and TCC compliance. Foreign contractors have no such requirements for government contracts. If we are to see a true growth in the Jamaican construction sector, we need to give equal access to our people. Jamaican contractors should be brought in line so they can fend for themselves and be able to compete locally and overseas. It's a shame. And it's a shame to hear the comments of some of you over there too. That they must defend themselves at home. Level the vibes, Mr. Speaker, and level the vibes of the local contractors. Jamaica is in dire need of a new direction for transport. So a new direction is needed for road construction and maintenance. We can all agree that a better and more efficient transport system will contribute to our productivity. So can we all agree that a better road network with better maintained roads will help to reduce road fatalities, increase productivity, and reduce burdensome vehicle operating costs? We can keep on doing things the same way and expect a different result. The time has come for a new direction, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know that I could not end my presentation without mentioning the state of our bridge infrastructure and its continued collapse before our eyes due to inadequate maintenance and inadequate financial provisions. The Troy Bridge again, Mr. Speaker. This is the second consecutive year. I must mention it. The situation for the residents of Northwest Manchester is getting worse. And up to now, no work has started to replace it. The situation is for citizens from adjoining communities of Cowick Park, Glasgow, Upton Beddy, Golden Run, and Oxford has remained desperate, and those from Troy in southern Trelawney. And people face danger or higher transport costs daily. Mr. Speaker, you know the people are suffering. The displacement of students, farmers and business over the past 2 years, 21 months to be precise, is unacceptable. The Ministry of Works is not helping. The Ministry of Education cannot help the students and teachers, as no intervention has been made. I remember when I was nearly thrown out of the house, out of this house, by the speaker for trying to ask for a little more for the teachers who have to traverse an additional 10 miles. The situation has resulted in students being transferred from the Veronica Campbell High School, Troy High, and primary school. This causes increased transport costs and students and teachers. Mr. Speaker, residents have been forced to improvise and make contraptions to cross the river in the most unsafe and dangerous manner. No citizen in a modern and civilized society should have to endure this for 2 years. Why can't even a temporary option be found to save lives and restore even a modicum of normality to people's lives? Mr. Speaker, the Troy Bridge collapsed in August of 2021. The Prime Minister has assured me that the design and costing have been completed. Funding is now in place for this financial year. But is also being told that it needs to go back to the Ministry of Finance, to the Public Investment Department, for them to determine if the bridge is a worthwhile investment. But, Mr. Speaker, the bridge they broke down. How can now you want to determine if it is a worthwhile investment or a worthwhile investment? Nothing can go so, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the treatment of the people by the Ministry of Works and the NWA leaves much to be desired, and the residents do not think their situation is being taken seriously. Madam Speaker, all of us have been elected in here on behalf of the people that we represent. We are the voice of the people that we represent. And I have been given a message by my constituents, a message by the residents of the adjoining communities that are affected by the Troy Bridge. They gave me a message to give to the Prime Minister. They say that he promised to visit the area last year, 6 months ago, to see firsthand their suffering, and he still has not visited. He stood up in this house saying that he was going to visit. Their message to him is that they say that when the bridge is completed, they don't want him to come and cut no ribbon and give the impression that he understands what they have been enduring for the last 2 years. We need a new direction. Madam Speaker, I also feel the pain of the citizens of the community of Woodsville in Hanover. They are now setting out on the same road of long suffering, where an agency and ministry just have no care. It will be a heavy burden they will have to carry. I hope they will not be treated as the residents of Northwest Manchester and Southern Trelawney have been treated. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, for too long, there has not been sufficient care. There has not been sufficient care about the things which affect the daily lives of people in many of our communities, especially rural people. It is often said patience is a virtue, but we should not make patience a difficult fruit to produce. The people of Jamaica must now only rely on what the Thessalonians were advised. Pray without ceasing. Or the Philippians, who are advised not to worry about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition. With thanksgiving, let your requests be made known. Madam Speaker, the people have been doing that in transport and works. How much petitioning can they do? Surely the government must listen and do its part. Although good things come to those who wait, but Bob Marley reminds us, I don't want to wait in vain. We cannot come year after year raising the same issues and getting no responses. Let us not test people's patience with their representatives and government. Many are tired of promises which never materialize. This is a very important parliamentary year because we are now equidistant from the last election to the next. We will have to report soon to our electors. We must stop talking and act on the persistent issues causing great misery among our people. I would like the people who elected me to say, well done, good and faithful servant. But election is not the only thing to be concerned about. It is also about our whole future. We must develop workable plans to move Jamaica forward as a people and as an emerging nation. We cannot be going around in circles. Work has started on constitutional reform, and the aspirations of our people must be considered fully. We want to be rid of the monarchy. As I put it in the resolution, thank you very much, Minister. As I put it in a resolution tabled 2 years ago. But we urgently need other things to complete the mission of nationhood. So it is not a mere parliamentary exercise, Madam Speaker, but one which the broadest cross-section of our citizens should be involved. Without that, we shall surely fail. Consensus is critical as we plot a new direction. It is important that we set out a vision in this new global environment. As we do that, we must also think out and begin to forge a common agenda that can be supported by all of us, Jamaicans, regardless of our voting preferences. We must imagine our future before we can see it. That's why we have Vision 2030. It is important to Jamaicans. Let us build the future we want to see. Thank you, Madam Speaker. God bless Jamaica. God bless the people of Jamaica. Thank you, Madam.